Right now, as you're watching this, the United States is burning up to $8.7 million every single day to drag two floating apocalypse cities halfway across the planet, not to fight, just to park them off Iran's coast and say, your move. This isn't a deployment. This is the biggest game of chicken in modern history, and the clock is already at zero. Forget everything you think you know about modern war. Stealth bombers, hypersonic missiles, drones, they're terrifying. But they're one-night stands, they hit and run. But America doesn't want to hit Iran once. America wants to own the sky above Iran for months. And there's only one weapon that can do that. A 100,000-ton nuclear-powered floating airbase. That brings 75 fighter jets, 7,000 sailors, and a permanent middle finger parked 50 miles offshore. This is why the Pentagon is emptying the Pacific, like it's on fire. Let's dive deeper into why these massive carriers are still the kings of the ocean, even in an age of drones and satellites. The U.S. Navy's aircraft carriers aren't just ships. They're mobile fortresses that project power like nothing else. Built on the lessons of World War II, where carriers like the USS Enterprise turned the tide in the Pacific. Today's Nimitz and Ford-class behemoths carry forward that legacy. The Nimitz class, with 10 in service since the 1970s, are the workhorses, each displacing over 100,000 tons and capable of sustaining operations for decades, thanks to nuclear propulsion. The newer Ford-class, starting with the USS Gerald R. Ford, introduces electromagnetic catapults for faster jet launches and advanced automation to reduce crew size. But deploying them isn't cheap or easy. It's a symphony of logistics that burns through millions daily, covering everything from reactor maintenance to aviation fuel and crew sustenance. Watch this. USS Abraham Lincoln, currently staring down threats in the Arabian Sea after being rushed to US Central Command, is already on station, operating south of Iran as tensions boil. She's part of Carrier Strike Group 3, complete with guided missile destroyers like the USS Frank E. Peterson Jr., USS Michael Murphy, and USS Spruance, plus surveillance aircraft and helicopters. But President Trump has warned that if talks with Iran fail, a second carrier might join her. The USS George H.W. Bush, based in Norfolk, Virginia, departed recently and could cross the Atlantic, punch through the Mediterranean, or even detour around Africa if the Suez is risky. Meanwhile, the USS Theodore Roosevelt is prepping on the West Coast, wrapping up training exercises. This leaves the Western Pacific vulnerable, with just the USS George Washington holding the line in Japan against Chinese ambitions. China's watching this and smiling, because right now the US just went all in on the Middle East table. This is the biggest naval redistribution since Iraq 2003, echoing the massive buildup before Operation Iraqi Freedom, when multiple carrier groups converged to overwhelm Saddam's forces. And it's happening right now, February 2026, with the Abraham Lincoln already conducting operations in the Arabian Sea, as confirmed by recent US Navy updates. But jets alone don't win wars. Iran has thousands of Shahed drones ready to swarm cheap, kamikaze UAVs like the Shahed -136 that can fly hundreds of miles and overwhelm defenses. Iran's drone arsenal includes the Mohajer series for reconnaissance and strikes, and they fielded over 1,000 new drones just this year, integrated into their army for long-range surveillance and attacks. Add to that their massive ballistic missile stockpile, the largest in the Middle East, with up to 2,000 missiles capable of ranges from 620 to 1,240 miles or more. We're talking advanced systems like the Sejil, speeding at over 17,000 kilometers per h with a 2,500 kilometers reach, the Emad at 1,700 kilometers, the Ghadr and Khorramshahr at 2,000 kilometers, the hypersonic Fattah -1, and the Khyber Shekin. These aren't just deterrents. Iran has used them offensively, launching hundreds during the 2025 Israel-Iran war, where over 550 ballistic missiles and 1,000 drones targeted Israeli sites. So the US is doing something genius and terrifying. They're stripping Cold War missile depots in Germany and Japan, shipping thousands of old, cheap Patriot missiles just to kill $20,000 drones, saving the brand new $12.7 million PAC-3 interceptors for the real monsters. Iran's hypersonic ballistic missiles like the Fattah -1, which can maneuver at speeds making them nearly impossible to track. We're talking 300-plus heavy airlift flights in under 2 weeks, using C-17 Globemasters to flood the region with 4 to 6 Patriot batteries and THAAD components. The Pentagon has just completed deploying additional THAAD and Patriot systems across 20 bases in the Middle East, from Jordan and Kuwait to Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, to protect us forces, Israel, and Gulf allies. THAAD intercepts high-altitude ballistic threats, while Patriots handle shorter-range missiles and drones. This bolsters defenses amid fears of Iranian retaliation, especially after Iran's recent drone probes toward us warships. The sky over the Middle East is about to become the most expensive shooting gallery in history, with each interception costing millions but potentially saving billions in damage. Here's the part that should make your brain explode. Just showing up, no shots fired, costs $1.5 to $2 billion in 30 days. That's $8.7 million per Dalton Y per Carrier Strike Group, factoring in the carrier, air wing, escorts, and submarine. Jet fuel for 600-plus sorties a day, guzzling thousands of gallons per launch, feeding 7,000 sailors on a floating city, with daily resupplies of fresh food and water, burning diesel for escort destroyers every 3 days, plus maintenance on nuclear reactors that power the carrier indefinitely. This isn't war. This is the most expensive flex in human history, dwarfing even the costs of past deployments, like the Persian Gulf War, where carrier operations alone ran into the hundreds of millions. But here's the Achilles heel nobody talks about. If Qatar or UAE say we're scared of Iranian retaliation and close their ports, the entire strike group is screwed. The carrier is nuclear, she can steam forever, but her escort destroyers need diesel every 3 days. Break the fuel chain from Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The most powerful fleet ever built turns into a $15 billion floating museum. Iran knows this. One lucky submarine, one mine, one missile, like their advanced Ghadr-class subs or anti-ship ballistic missiles, game over. Iran's underground missile cities house hundreds of cruise missiles like the Ghadr -380L with over 1,000 kilometers range, ready to disrupt shipping lanes. But what if the carriers don't make it in time? Then America pulls the real ace. Global Strike Command 3 bombers, 24 hours, anywhere on Earth. Let's break them down. First, the B-2 Spirit, the Invisible Ghost, a stealth bomber that flies from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri to Iran nonstop, penetrating advanced air defenses undetected. With a 6,000-mile unrefueled range, it carries up to 40,000 pounds of ordnance, including 30,000 lb massive ordnance penetrators for bunker-busting nuclear facilities. Only 20 in service, it's the ultimate door kicker, dual-capable for conventional or nuclear strikes. Second, the B-1 Lancer, the supersonic bone crusher, originally dual-capable, but now focused on conventional missions. It rips in low and fast at Mach 1.2, carrying the largest payload 75,000 pounds of any U.S. bomber, obliterating air defenses with cruise missiles and precision bombs. Based at Dyess and Ellsworth AFBs, it's flown over 12,000 combat sorties since 2001, proving its endurance in conflicts like Afghanistan and Iraq. Third, the B-52 Stratofortress, the immortal missile truck, in service since 1955, with 74H models still flying. It stands off 800 miles and rains hell with 70,000 pounds of cruise missiles, like the AGM-86 LCM for nuclear or conventional payloads. Upgraded with new engines and radars, it'll serve until 2050, capable of 8,800 miles unrefueled in maritime strikes. These bombers form the air leg of the nuclear triad, but their conventional might is unmatched. B-52S dropped over 40% of munitions in Vietnam, and B-1S have been key in anti-ISIS ops. Carriers are scary, but these three. They're the reason Iran's leaders don't sleep, especially with Iran's Air Force relying on outdated F-14s and MiG-29s that couldn't touch them. So why move the slow-floating cities? Because sometimes you don't want to strike and leave, you want to arrive and never leave. This is the largest U.S. naval deployment in 20 years, with the Abraham Lincoln leading and potential reinforcements like the Bush en route. It's happening right now, amid Trump's warnings and Oman-hosted talks that could avert war or ignite it. And when it's over, the world will never be the same. Smash subscribe and turn on notifications. Part 2 drops in 48 hours.